Anforderung empfangen. Ende.
Ende.
Bewegung! Vorwärts, Marsch! Auf geht's!
Ausschau halten.
Was war das? Aufpassen.
Seid aufmerksam.
Feueranforderung verstanden. Ende.
Augen offen halten.
And welcome back, gentlemen. As you can see, we are at the 1 hour and 1 minute mark. We've passed 59 minutes in game, and we have about 61 minutes left to go. My attack out here in the orchard has run into enemy resistance. Quite unexpectedly, I managed to insert one of my teams in behind this enemy team right here. Two of my guys immediately got shot. One of them had managed to turn around and throw a grenade before getting shot, and that grenade went off, caused 2 casualties over here, and then we managed to kill one more of the enemy team. The lone survivor of the team is now running away, but he's about to get shot in the back by this guy in very short order. Elsewhere, we have 3 casualties from this machine gun team, mortar team, including the team leader who has the submachine gun, which makes up about most of their firepower. He's currently in the take cover stance, and he's going to run all the way back to his platoon leader. Meanwhile, these 2 guys have opened up with their rifles. This mortar team managed to get themselves caught in a little bit of a crossfire between this team and this team over here. So far they haven't taken any casualties, but they are pinned down and they're trying to take cover. These 2 ammunition bearers right here fired off all 5 rounds in their rifles and are reloading. And this platoon HQ, which you just saw in the action phase, caught sight of the enemy squad over here, and they are now engaging with submachine guns and rifles. Elsewhere, we have a couple of HQ teams out here basically spotting, and I'm trying to get them into a position where they can also lay down fire from their submachine guns. The second wave of this particular operation in this orchard is still over here. These are mortar teams that are set up, and they're currently firing off the last of their high explosive and smoke. These guys just laid down a second smoke barrage in front of Casa Finella right here, and the other mortar is currently firing off the last of its high explosive, and then it will target its smoke at Casa Finella as well. Back here at Masseria Emilia, I've only left the battalion commander inside the victory location to secure it. Over here at Casa Albaneta, I have actually abandoned this victory location, which will cost me a few points at the end of this battle, but that's a little bit further ahead than where we're at. Just keep in mind, I did choose to abandon Casa Albaneta by taking this HQ team out. I had every intention of putting him back in there after I had gotten my opponent to agree to a ceasefire, but for now, we're just kind of stuck without it. My 2 heavy machine gun teams in the middle here have slowly been creeping forward. We haven't yet seen any enemies, although now that firing has begun over here, I'm fairly certain that these guys are going to start spotting enemy targets soon, and if not, I might just have to move them up a little bit closer to the enemy and then get them set up again. Remember, heavy machine gun teams can unpack, move, I think, up to 3 action spots away, about 24 meters, and then they can reset up their gun very quickly. It only takes about 5 seconds. So they can pack up in 14 seconds, they can move, and then they can... well, actually, no, they don't even need to pack up. If you're moving them less than, I think, 3 action spots, or 3 action spots total, they will pack up instantly, move, and then deploy instantly. Basically, it simulates them picking up the gun while it's still on its tripod, moving it to its new location, and then just putting the tripod down with the gun still ready to fire. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure we're going to see that in action at some point during the next few minutes. This machine gunner right here, he's the last survivor of that ill-fated machine gun team from up in the victory location here. Casa d'Antonio. He's moving up here to try to medic up his teammate, who's still wounded, hasn't yet quite passed away yet. This squad leader over here has been working to provide buddy aid for some of the dead machine gunners out in front. This HQ team over here just is busy providing buddy aid to this guy, and the heavy machine gun team has moved back into the house. I'm going to wait for things to kick off against enemy forces over here, and then I'll probably try moving them back up into the second story so they can continue shooting. On the other side of the small patch of woods over here, I have a squad that's been probing its way down this path over here. This is my first indication of enemy casualties. As you can see, we have an entire squad of enemy troops basically in their position dead. And I have an HQ team currently occupying that spot. But this is the first intel that I'm getting about casualties from the enemy that I've caused. As you can see, one of their casualties is all the way over here as well. He's part of this squad. And there was another couple of enemies somewhere. I think it was part of a two-man team, like a scout team, that was also dead, but can't seem to find them. Anyway, regardless, that little bit of intelligence right there told me a bit about the state of the enemy, that if he had lost a full squad right at the tip of the spear, it's likely that his casualties from my artillery that impacted over here were rather significant. Of course, I'm not really going to find any more dead bodies over here. It could be that he provided buddy aid and got them out. Maybe he just abandoned this squad up here as being too far forward and too close to my own positions to provide buddy aid. Elsewhere, my counterattack over here by Casa Finella is probing forward. I did manage to put a few infantry teams up into this other side here. Basically, this is about as close to the enemy as I've gotten this entire time, and so far things seem to be working out. I have a couple of infantry teams hunting their way across here. This is going to form the extreme right of my attack. You'll notice I have teams with submachine guns. They're doubled up on submachine guns. I want them to reach this stone wall and then be able to put down a very large amount of high volume of fire very quickly. Once they're in position, the rest of my force is just going to come charging across the field, get up behind this stone wall right here, and then we're just going to attack right through the orchard in this direction if we can. So I guess the one thing remaining to do is to take a look at what my intentions are from the enemy perspective. And this is something I think you ought to do anytime you're playing combat mission multiplayer. You should look at things from the enemy perspective and try to put yourself in his shoes so you can kind of help determine what your next action should be. So, from the enemy's perspective, he's launched an attack up through this field here in the back of Casa Finella and up through this orchard over here, approximately in company strength. They managed to capture the victory location, but then they got a full-on artillery pounding. Right over here, I'm assuming that that company that he sent on this attack is basically written off in its entirety. So, we have one company up here basically dead, as far as I can tell. We had what looked like another company-sized attack coming up here towards Casa d'Antonio. Some of them tried to go through the trees over here and ran into my landmines. Some of them tried to go up this path over here and got chewed up by my infantry teams over here. Then I was able to retarget my artillery using the target reference point inside Casa d'Antonio, and I was able to give quite a bit of an artillery hit to the path on the right and get a lot of tree bursts in here in this forested area. So I'm assuming that's probably total casualties, maybe a platoon and a half. So he's got about a half of a company that's been taken out right here. He did have at least one, maybe two platoons, or one platoon in a machine gun section back here in these bushes. Have not seen hair nor hide of them since. He did have, at the very end up there, he seemed to have an infantry squad here and another infantry squad up on the wire. I think he was trying to blast his way through it when I had put that machine gun team in the second floor and managed to shoot at him a little. I thought he was trying to blast his way through the wire right here, but it looks like that has rapidly been abandoned. We've gone several minutes without any activity in this sector. And then over here on the left, as my guys have moved forward, I've run into some scattered infantry teams, but this kind of looks like a flank guard. I don't think it's an actual infantry company. So if we try to account for the enemy forces that we've seen, and making a broad assumption about my enemy's strength, he's probably in battalion strength. So we've accounted for about one infantry company over here at Casa Finella. We've accounted for another infantry company over here at Casa d'Antonio. And if one assumes that there's an infantry company buried in these trees right here, kind of linking this company with this company and being in reserve for both, we could safely assume, I think, that the forces out here are probably supplemental. Maybe it's the scout platoon, maybe it's some battalion level assets or things like that, weapons teams, etc., etc. That's probably just out here providing a flank guard for what was his primary attack through Casa Finella and a secondary attack on Casa d'Antonio. So my assumptions that I'm making about the enemy's strength is, first, that he's likely taken about 25 to 30% casualties so far. That's a rough estimation of what I think his casualty figures are. He's probably still got, if he's in battalion strength, he's probably still got one full infantry company that is undamaged. And he likely has a weapons platoon or weapons company of some kind, maybe a scout platoon. I know the Commonwealth battalions have some kind of scouting detachment that are permanently attached to the battalion. So I'm anticipating an infantry company, probably another half of an infantry company consisting of 2 platoons, somewhere in here. And then I'm assuming weapons platoon or scout company out here on the flank, just basically as flank protection. So the broad strokes of my counterattack here is to try to push in his flank protection over here, which will leave whatever troops he has in this woods over here or on this bank over here kind of exposed. As I have forces moving through the orchard over here, they'll be able to get line of sight or line of fire on them. My heavy machine gun teams are going to be pressing in from the middle. They'll soon be able to lay down more fire, and these mortar teams back here are also going to cross this open ground and join in the attack. And then I have an infantry squad over here, which is basically going to be the anvil in cooperation with the heavy machine gun team here, and a couple of HQ teams that are kind of backing them up. Is it enough to destroy the enemy forces that are in this pocket right here? At least I'm assuming it's a pocket. Highly unlikely, but it should be enough to make the enemy think twice about trying to renew an attack on Casa d'Antonio. Basically, I want to put him on the defensive over here and try to pin him in place so he can't move. That would leave me with whatever forces he has at Casa Finella. Now, the eagle-eyed observer would have noticed an incoming heavier artillery round. You would have heard that whistling sound right before the end of the turn. Now, I tried as hard as I could to find where that thing landed, and I have no clue where on the map that thing actually impacted. So I have no idea where it was going to be targeted, but when it does fire for effect, there's going to be a large fire for effect going off right in this area here, which is a little inconvenient for me because part of my counterattack on Casa Finella is going to pass through that area. And you're going to see a little bit of some casualties and some disconcerting behavior going on. As you might have noticed, Engelman over here, he did manage to medic up his buddies, and now he's heading back. That's good on him. He's a good man, that Engelman. I hope he survives. I'm not 100% sure if he does. So what I'm anticipating is probably an entire enemy infantry company down here at Casa Finella, or maybe slightly behind it. They would have reformed for their attack on Casa Raposa, and then what I'm hoping to do with this attack that is just now stepping off is I'm trying to catch them in the flank, have them turn to meet me, and as they turn to meet me, they're going to run right into the jaws of my little trap that's going on over here. Is it enough to destroy them? That's also doubtful. I mean, the thing is that as I'm launching this counterattack, I have to keep in mind that I still don't have the strength to destroy the enemy. And this is where it gets to the point where you need to remind yourself that you're not fighting the enemy soldiers on the field. What you are fighting is the mind of the enemy player themselves. And as I've launched this attack and I've made contact here and I'm reevaluating my position and what I'm doing and kind of coming to a little bit more of a realistic assumption as to the enemy's strength, my objectives for this counterattack have also shifted. Instead of trying to just straight out recapture Casafanella, no longer do I really think that's possible. I went from lining up all my troops over here, thinking, this is going to be great, we're going to launch a big attack right down this road, we're going to head through this upper area over here, we're going to cut through this orchard right here, and we're going to retake Casafanella, it's going to be great, right? Now I'm sitting here thinking, you know what? Instead of trying to capture Casafanella, if I can just engage the enemy heavily enough that he comes to an overinflated estimate of my own strength, what I might be able to do is keep everything that I have and get him to agree to a ceasefire. And that's going to be the name of the game from now until the end of the battle, is I want to engage the enemy heavily enough that he, in his own mind, comes to the realization that he cannot easily defeat me. And maybe he won't even try. And if he won't even try, then maybe I can get him to agree to a ceasefire, and we can bring this battle to a close without too much trouble. So from now until the end of the battle, we've officially made contact. So from here on out, it's going to be all action, 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 without much letting up. I'm not going to have a lot of time to make a lot of commentary, so I want to kind of lay this all out in advance. My objectives now are simply to engage the enemy here, engage the enemy in these woods over here, engage the enemy in this orchard over here, with the ultimate objective of forcing him to accept a ceasefire that leaves me in command of these 4 victory locations. However, one thing I have to remind you is that, yes, I am aware Casa Albaneta is empty, and you know what? At this point, I'm like, I need every man in this attack. This team has 2 submachine guns. They're not just going to sit in Casa Albaneta and occupy. But what you're going to see now is the result of this plan that I have to force the enemy into accepting a ceasefire. And until then, I guess you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer. And I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.